The live music scene is one of the most vital parts of today's music industry. There is nothing like the thrill of going to a live show, being a part of a group of welcoming individuals who all love one artist, one band, or one genre of music. There's nothing like connecting with fans. There is nothing like connecting with like-minded individuals who all love the same kind of thing. And from an artist standpoint, there's nothing like playing in front of a live crowd. Of course, unfortunately, with everything that's going on in the world, we haven't had the pleasure of being able to enjoy live shows that much in recent times. It's still, however, the biggest moneymaker, it's the biggest draw, and it's the biggest thing artists should be focused on in today's music industry. And that's why today's talk is so valuable, because we sat down with somebody that knows the live music scene better than anybody else. So for artists looking to go on tour, start booking shows for themselves, promote new albums or singles, or just looking to get themselves into the live music industry, this talk is for you. For people looking to book festivals or book people into shows that they are putting on, this talk is for you. Because we're talking to somebody who's worn many hats, who's seen the live music scene from an artist standpoint, and from a booking standpoint, and from a management standpoint. So this is episode 4 of the Movement Podcast. Enjoy. In a very crowded art, music, and entertainment industry, it can be hard to find your voice in the sea of millions of people trying to be just like you. If you're like me and want to learn how to stand out amongst the crowd, then you're in the right place. Join me as I sit down with some of the industry's brightest minds and uncover the secrets involved in making it in your chosen field. This is the Movement Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Movement Podcast. This podcast sits alongside the launch of an exciting new community called The Movement. We aim to connect artists with the people that can help them further themselves in this crowded industry and sit down with some of that industry's brightest minds to shed some light on where people can go to live out their dreams. I'm really looking forward to today's chat because we have an invaluable guest on with us today. He has more than 15 years of experience in the music industry, beginning his career as the singer and songwriter in the band of Columbia, which had 6 songs make it to radio and more than 10 tours across Canada and the United States. He is now the owner of LiveX Canada, Vtix Solutions, and a managing partner at the live agency producing more than 300 shows every single year. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Mr. Kevin Schallie. How are you doing today?
Hey, Harry, how you doing?
Doing excellent, thanks. All right, Kevin, before we begin, I would like to let you know that rather than a question-answer type podcast, I'd like this to be an open discussion. So although I have questions prepared, feel free to ask questions back, get involved in lengthy discussions, and if you find a topic you're passionate about, feel free to go down the rabbit hole. We'd just love to pick your brain. Any information you have is invaluable. So we're going to start.
That's great.
The same question I ask everybody else at the start of the podcast. Let us know about your journey to the music industry, some of your roadblocks, hurdles, how you overcame them.
Yeah, well, I started off as an artist, and I was in the band Columbia, like you mentioned. There obviously every artist is going to have a lot of hurdles while they go along. Mm-hmm. Probably the biggest one is finding management and getting a tour booking agent. And those are things we did end up getting, but getting to that point is the toughest part. And making sure that you don't overplay. That's me as the booker always suggests to bands, and we made sure we didn't do that with Columbia as well. We didn't play too often, and that was really good because it helped us get a bigger following in all the cities we went to.
Right. And what got you into booking? So eventually you obviously transitioned from an artist side to more of a back-end booking side. What kind of directed you that way?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, we did have a manager and we did have a booking agent. So I watched what they did, and I would see how dishonest a lot of agents were. So I wanted to bring some honesty into the industry in terms of booking bands, showing them proper breakdowns of what they're making, for good or for bad. You need to know what the actual numbers are, and we wouldn't see that always when we were on tour. So
right.
When I stopped playing music as much, and that's when I started booking more, that was the first thing I thought about. I said, what can I do to kind of change that? And that was what I was able to change and, be very transparent about everything in booking. And and that's the main reason why I started doing booking myself.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so real more transparency, more allowing the artist to kind of understand what's going on the back end kind of thing. And giving them the tools, I assume is what I kind of gathered from
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, a lot of information. Anybody can always phone us up, and it's free to. Well, I'll talk to you as long as you need to about your career and what your plans are with the band, and I'll give them information. And if they want to take it, that's great. And if they don't, it doesn't matter either. It's just good for everybody to share their experiences.
For sure. And if you're all right with it, I'll throw that link at the bottom of this podcast for people to go check out your company, and any questions they have, they can send your way. So with that in mind, as a booker, what kind of thing are you looking for artists? So what kind of makes you go when you're looking at an artist, this is the kind of guys or girls that I want in my event? What makes you decide that?
Well, the first thing that we want to look for is someone that's easy to work with. You think it's always about music or other things. No, a lot of the time it's the first contact that we really judge a lot on. So is the person prepared? Are they punctual with getting back on emails? So that's the first thing. If you'd be the best band in the world, but if they're hard to work with, it's just not worth our time. So we just looked at how nice people are, and if they get back in time. I mean, if it takes 2-3 days to respond to an email, it's just not going to work out, because shows and things change quite often, and you get things like show advances and stuff, and we need to know that you get that. Otherwise, we're making 2 and 3 times the amount of emails to get the same thing said to them. So, people getting back to us, confirming they've got emails. And then just once we get to know someone, it goes from emails to eventually I talk to them, and then you get to know someone better. So that's the first thing that we look for. Then we obviously look for music, and there's some weekend warriors, and then there's some people that really want to be in the music industry. We work with both, but obviously we're more interested in working with people that have original songs and really want to make it. So that's the exciting part about music.
Yeah, for sure. Does it ever change whether or not you'll look into an artist as to whether they have the say music out already, or maybe they're in the studio, or maybe they haven't even gotten to that stage, but they're literally just getting in? Does that at all differ the way you book an artist?
No, it doesn't, but it is always easier. I always tell bands that it's always easier to have a band at the beginning work with us, because we can plan out things. What I do often is I plan a whole year with a band. So we don't just plan this next show. We go, let's plan the next year. Let's plan the next 6 shows. And it's easier for us to pair them with the right type of bands, and then to give them maybe, say, a couple bigger shows during the year, and then a couple where they're maybe headlining. So, the more information we have, and it's a lot easier if we're working with the same band for the whole year, then we can offer them better things, and it's just easier for both of us.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that also, when you're booking those bands or working with those bands, you can get a second band, and they can kind of work with you for a year, and then you kind of pair those together. How consistent are you when booking bands together? So say you got 4 bands that you're working with for a year. How consistently are you putting those 4 bands into a show, if at all?
Yeah, we generally try to not book the same bands with each other too often, because the key would be to get them to have new followers. So I try to put bands with other bands so that everybody can share in their audience, and that's a lot healthier. It used to be much more common to have the same bands on the same bill, and you still see that sometimes, but I don't think it works very well. So.
That's actually a very nice segue to my next question. Live music is embedded in all of us, I'd say. The thrill of a live show is an experience like no other. For me personally, I'm sure for a lot of people. But the idea of a live show seemingly has changed. So, in your opinion, how has that live music industry changed over the last decade, 2 decades, maybe even more short term?
Yeah, I mean, it has changed a lot in the last 10 years, for sure. So 10 years ago is when I was a musician. The average band in the city was bringing out 100 people. Bigger bands are bringing out 300-400 people for just their band. Now, our biggest band is maybe for local bands, they're bringing 100 is a lot. So that's a big difference. I think there was
the reason for that is? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I think that maybe the quality of recordings has gone down, so you're not getting as many actual fans coming to the shows. I just noticed that the bands either had their stuff recorded, say 10 years ago, or they didn't. And now there's a lot of demos being released. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily the healthiest thing always, because for a complete fan that doesn't know you, doesn't know your music, if their first experience with you is a demo, you might not get them as a lifelong fan. Think about it. If your favorite band, you probably heard their first or second album, and it was probably completely recorded properly. It was mastered, and it sounded amazing. You probably heard it on the radio or the internet, and it's already an amazing song. You're not listening to like Nirvana's demos as the first thing you heard from them. You probably heard Teen Spirit as the first thing you heard from them. So just quality, I would just... because people can record at home now and not everybody goes to a school like you went to the music school, Nimbus. Everybody's not going to Nimbus, so everybody's not necessarily recording their stuff properly. So I think that's the big difference, that there's not as many true fans. There's a lot of friend fans, but the key for bands, I think, in the local scene is to get fans, not just people they know.
Right. In terms of booking events, do you feel that that's a harder thing to do nowadays in this industry, or do you think it was harder to do 10 years ago or even 20 years ago? You say, I don't know how much you dabbled into it 20 years ago, but
yeah, it is different now. There's less bookers available now, but they're booking, like my company books quite a few of the venues now in the city. So it's harder. For example, when we started out, if people didn't bring 50 to 70 people as an opener, you wouldn't be called back, or the booking agent would maybe call you back and put you in an opening spot. 50 to 70 now, you're possibly going to be headlining something. So as a booker, that's harder because we're trying to have a nice full show, and it's harder to get people out. But from an industry standpoint, I think the venues kind of got sick of working directly with bands, is what I've noticed. So they want to work with one booking agent like us. So then we're dealing with the bands, so that there's, someone to, getting all the crazy emails or all the stuff that they don't want to deal with.
Having to deal with everything that every band has to throw at them, basically.
Exactly.
Would you say from an artist standpoint, it's better to work with just one booker and just have them kind of focus you in with multiple shows? Or do you think it's better to kind of span your ideas across multiple booking companies?
No, I think it's better to work with one booker ideally, because then that you can work on, like I was saying earlier, that master plan. I think that's probably the best thing a band can do, is kind of be consistent and have a plan in place. Now, there might be occasional one-offs, like going to Canadian Music Week or a festival or whatever, but a good booking agent will account for that and still work with that. But when it comes to local things or tour kickoffs or CD release, I would work with one person.
Just work with the one person. Yeah. Still on the topic of artists in the live music scene, what advice would you give somebody looking to get shows? How do you think they would sell themselves? What do they bring to the table to get into the bigger shows, to get the bigger spots?
Yeah, really. So the things we look for is bands that don't overplay. That way they can open up for our bigger shows. Honesty goes back to the first thing that I was talking about. Honesty is the big thing. So if someone's overselling themselves in the initial email, when we see them, we might not even respond back, because we know that you're a band member talking about your band. So you don't have to come at it like you're a manager talking for your band. So we'd rather just have the honest, open stuff. I mean, don't make it too long of an email. Get to the point. Maybe ask for a phone call with your booking agent, and try to start a relationship with them. That's what I'd suggest.
Yeah, I think getting to know people, especially in this business, is a lot more valuable than trying to treat everybody like robots. It's kind of like what you're saying. If you come in and you're an artist, but you're acting like a manager, you're basically playing like this robotic part, in a sense, I guess, is kind of what I feel from that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's all about relationships, especially the music industry's got a lot smaller, so I think that relationships are a lot more important.
Yeah. Let's talk about touring. So your former band has been on numerous tours, spanning various locations, length, even time zones. Your opinion for artists, what is one of the biggest things to focus on as a touring artist? And how would you go about booking a tour?
Well, yeah, it's very, very important, because it shows people in the industry that you're actually, a real band. Most bands we see still break up after their first tour, and when I say tour, they'll have 4 or 5 dates, which isn't really a tour, but they'll break up after it. So it shows people in the industry, if you've been going on a lot of tours and you're still together, it means you're really into it. The band obviously likes each other enough, and then it's worth putting in more time into that band. In terms of booking, tours, it's really changed. So 10 years ago, you'd have a booking agent. There'd be booking agents across Canada or America. They'd all work together. Now on the indie scale, so that's the big scale, it's still there. But on the indie scale, I've noticed that venues across Canada have gone to their managers. The actual bar manager is now their booking agent at the venue.
Right.
So for better or worse, normally that's not the best thing because those people are very busy doing their stuff in their bar. They're, they have employees, they have their liquor orders, and they have all their stuff to do. So having the band is not necessarily their priority, even though it's a big part of their business. So that's the difference. So it's a lot easier for bands to contact venues now, instead of trying to find that booking agent. And if the booking agent in the past didn't want to work with you, then you're just not going to be able to play at that place in whatever city across Canada. So now I suggest going directly to I would just look at another band that's touring that you like, another local band, and just notice what venues they keep on going to. And then you can even reach out to them and say, hey, who's your contact at the venue? Or you just go to all the different venues and do it yourself. Generally, there's not enough money to be made in touring in the indie side to get someone like me to book the tour. I don't feel comfortable taking the little money that bands do have. So again, they could just call up and ask me for like this information like you're asking.
Right. And speaking of the money kind of side of things, what do you think someone should focus on, or an artist or a band should focus on in a live show? Is merchandise maybe one of the first things you go for, or is just the quality of the music and a great show the first thing?
Well, quality of the music is always number one. It's always number one. But having something for people to remember you by is key. And again, I don't see it too much in the local scene. People are out drinking. They watch your band. You're an amazing band. They're going to still go out for the rest of the night. Are they going to remember you just because you're a great band? Who knows? If you have a T-shirt or some CD or something, like a little card with your link on it, something to give them. Then the next morning they'll be like, "Oh yeah, this band was great," and then they have that information from you. So yeah, I would definitely merch should be within the first 2 or 3 shows. I would suggest getting merch. Bands are waiting 2 years to get merch, and it makes no sense. Because again, if you want to get signed and you want to be in a better, like a business situation, you need to have these things in place before a record label gets you. At least a lot of the times they want to see that you can do it yourself, and then they're going to add to your business. Right.
And speaking of the record label, the industry is changing. Everybody knows that. Everybody who's been in music, everybody who's an artist, who's a booker, knows that the industry is changing. And you hear so many stories of the stay-at-home artist. So asking your opinion on the topic of a record deal, is it really a necessary step? Because with record companies seemingly taking ownership of rights and money off personal property and all this jazz going on, and the increasing number of independent musicians, and of course the Grammy-winning producer who made his record on a laptop in his basement. Obviously, I'm talking about Billie Eilish's producer. Yeah. Are we at an age of the musician without a record company? Or is it still a high up value for
so I mean, even those people still need a record company to distribute their music, right? So I think you eventually do need one, but I don't think it's as important right away. I think a big booking agent would be something that would be probably the best idea. A lot of the times I see booking agent is the first thing, then they're getting a manager, and then they're getting a record deal. Sometimes the record company doesn't want your manager, so sometimes it's good to stay without a manager as long as possible as well. So there's just no right way to do it. If you get a good record deal, I would take a good record deal. But likely, most people are not going to get a good record deal or a record deal at all. So, I mean, I would think of it as your own business and really work hard. And you can do so many things with Spotify and YouTube now that you don't need a record label per se, but you do need to work with the right people to make your videos and the right producers to make your music. And you still have to work with all the people that you had to work with a record label, but you can do it on your own dime now. So it just really depends. The problem is now you can't just be a performer and this artist that thinks everybody else is going to do everything for you. Sadly, you have to have a business side and you have to do art, which is sometimes not the best thing for the art. Right. It's just the way it is.
This is a necessary step. And I think people as artists and as bands tend to overlook that business side, which is why I think it's valuable for you to be able to look at it from both sides. Would you recommend an artist or a newcomer in the industry to kind of wear a lot of different hats within the industry to kind of get an overall knowledge, or is just getting an idea of the business side and sticking to your artistry the best way to do it?
I mean, there's no right answer, but I think that second part was the right thing. Yeah, you mean get the right people to work with you so that they're doing the good work for you. You still have to have the idea of who you need to work with, but you could get other people to do the business side and you can stick to art, but you do need to find the right team around you. But I mean, I would really suggest getting a good producer, someone that's maybe done some music that you like, and then work with them, and you'll notice that those people have connections and they might have some information on what they did with that other band that you like, and it's all connected.
Yeah. A lot of people, kind of agree with that idea. Let's go out and get someone like this. But a lot of people don't know how to go out and get somebody like that. Like, obviously, we talked earlier about just sending an email, getting to the point, being personable and honest and open. What other things would you recommend to do for an artist? Is it full on, like, let's spend 2 years networking and building a connection to then go to these bigger people, the idea, or do you just reach straight out to those big people and just see where it takes you?
You can go right. I would just go right towards them. And these days, you can contact some of the biggest producers in the industry by email. It's unbelievable, and they'll get back to you. Right. Especially if you're paying. If you're paying them, they'll reach back out to you. So I would just go right for it. You don't have to wait 2 years. If I know it seems like you want to wait and do all these things, but I would suggest just making your list of who you want to contact and just going for it. Time is precious, and your music could be in right now, and you wait 2 years, plus it takes a couple of years to get signed, maybe, and then you don't have anything out for 5 to 7 years. Like, you want to really move on things in my situation if you have something going on that's really good.
Right. Yeah, that's excellent advice. Let's go back to show booking, because obviously that's your main deal. It's your main gig. What brings people to a show nowadays? Obviously, it's changed a little bit. Artists are more open. They're on social media. I'd said before, I hear all these stories about, they're so hidden. You never really know the life of an artist. And I think the more open it got, the less people were willing to just go to a show to experience it. So
I totally agree. Well, I truly think that people, the fans, know too much about artists these days. So if their favorite band has a really harsh political opinion or something, it turns a lot of people off. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have a political opinion, but back in the day, you heard of stories of like the Stones and Zeppelin, and it was mysterious because they didn't do interviews that often. You didn't know about them. So it built this idea of them. And I would suggest as a band to not talk so much. And I would go as far as to limit what each band member is doing on social media to kind of, you don't want people thinking about your opinion over the music. It's all about the music. So
100%.
And I think that could have to do with people not coming out as much, and what brings them out is still just being social. People want to be social. People want to have a good time. And I think that if there was really, really good music, I think that capacity wouldn't be an issue. I think people just come out and support. And you see that with really good bands. The good local bands can fill up any venue. So 100%. It's all about songs and,
Yeah. About people coming out, wanting to have a good time. There's seemingly no better time than a festival, a music festival. It brings everyone in and involved, and it's sort of a staple for artists and performers. Something like Coachella is sometimes the end goal for people. Like, I know I've made it if I play at Coachella, if I headline Coachella, if I play this festival or whatever. How important is today's festival scene to the music industry, and how do you think we get involved?
Yeah, I think it's very important. But I think that before getting those dreams of playing festivals, I would suggest trying to get music out on, at least get bigger on Spotify, get bigger on YouTube, and ideally get on the radio still. There are still spots on radio. So you just want you can play a festival before you ever make it. So I would make bigger goals than things like festivals. Your goal should be to headline a festival one day.
For sure. What's the difference, say, between booking a festival and booking a show, obviously, other than the amount of people involved in it?
The biggest thing is just in the background, there's the radius clauses and stuff like that. So if someone plays a festival in a town, you might not be able to get a club gig in that town. So in a booking side of things, there are just different things in the background. But I mean, being a festival booker would be no different than being a venue booker. Yeah, it's all the same. You obviously have to really think about with a festival, you're obviously charging a lot more money. So you got to make sure that you have a really good experience for people to part with that much money.
Yeah, so I guess you'd probably only bring someone into a festival if you had a lot of experience with that band, I'd assume, because it's that important to have a lineup.
Yeah, I reserve that. Yeah, because festivals, you got to get on and off stage quick. Yeah. So we need to know that you're reliable. A, you're going to show up. B, that you're going to not dilly-dally in between, that you're going to maybe have some crew to help take off guitars and stuff in between, because even a big giant festival stage, sometimes 15, 20 minutes between sets, same as what it's like at a club. And people tend to think festivals somehow have more time, but they don't. Sometimes they actually have less time in between than the club gigs. So yeah, we reserve those spots for the bands we really love.
For the ones that are reliable and the ones that you've gained a connection with.
And that's obviously assuming that they have great music. Then first thing we think about is that reliability, how professional they are. Yeah. Are they going to look good when they work with the sound tech or the festival organizer? You don't want someone acting weird and it shows bad on you. It's like, oh, you booked this band and this guy was a real pain to work with. So
yeah, and obviously that looks bad on you. So getting that connection and kind of being there. I think the first email you send is it's got to be a good one, an enticing one that makes you want to sit down and really talk to this band and talk to this act, and then it kind of snowballs from there in this kind of industry, it seems.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, it looks like it's all the time we've got here, so I want to say
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. And I hope you're healthy, and I hope everybody that sees this is healthy.
As well.
Staying home. Me and my family have been home the whole time. No social. No, not breaking any rules. We're sticking to the guidelines. So
that's why we're on. Hopefully, by the time this podcast comes out, everything's going to be lifted. But if not, everyone, make sure you stay safe. Kevin, as insightful as always, it was a pleasure to sit down with you. For everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in to the next episode of the Movement Podcast. Let me know who you'd like me to sit down with in the future, and make sure to share this with your friends. Movement is here to help struggling artists and music business members get the answers to their burning questions about where they can go to make it in their chosen field. Kevin joined the movement. Now it's your turn. Thank you so much. This has been the Movement Podcast, the podcast where we sit down with some of the industry's brightest minds and look at the secrets of making it in your chosen field. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and share this all with your friends. What are you waiting for? It's time to join the movement.